So we're going to discuss what a good startup application looks like with two gentlemen, one from other side of the pond and the other one from this side of the pond. First, I would like to invite on the stage the person from this side of the pond, Max Kelly. He's the VP of Strategy and Innovation in TechStars London. Great to have you here, man. And then we have Craig Connor he's a Chief Marketing Officer at YCombinator, the most well-known acceleration program in the world. Please have a seat. I'm going to sit down with you guys. And let me look at the watch. Yeah, we're actually 1 minute ahead of the schedule, so we can really take it relaxed and go overtime as we want. I'm just looking, is everybody in the audience who wants to be here? Is there anybody here who doesn't want to be here? Raise your hand. Look, there is one lady raising her hand, like not listening, that's why. It was like, anyway, it doesn't matter, I'm going to sit down now and have a chat with you guys. So I just sat on my microphone thing or something. How do you like the IKEA chairs? I have the same ones in the balcony at home.
They're not very comfortable. They're not very comfortable.
They're not very comfortable. I think they're actually quite comfortable.
Okay.
Maybe it's my Estonian ass. It's very hard. Sorry about that. Anyway, so my first question to you guys would be that, let's start from the other end, the application end. That why would a startup go for an acceleration program? What are these things acceleration programs offer that really people want to get in there, and what to look in an acceleration program? Like two questions, basically. Who starts?
So I would say the first thing to remember is 80% of the companies that succeed don't go through an accelerator. So I'd highly recommend not going to an accelerator, which is kind of weird to be on the stage and say that. But if you don't need it, you're giving up equity, right, in almost all good accelerators. So only do it if it's going to be valuable to you. So then you have to say, okay, where's the value for you in going through that program? And programs vary, right? So the second thing I would say is only choose a good program. If you're giving up equity, if you're not giving up equity and they're going to give you free desk space and a bit of cash and so on, it doesn't really matter. But if you are giving up equity and you are having them on your cap table, only do a good one, because otherwise it's a waste of time and effort. More importantly, your time, which is enormously precious. So that's the second thing. Then it's actually, what are you going to get from it yourself or as an organization? And there, it depends what stage you're at. If you're really early, pre-MVP, it's going to be about that discovery phase. And you might not get as far as you'd like. If you have some sort of MVP, you're beginning to test that, you want mentor-driven stuff, then that can be very valuable. If you want some growth stuff and you're going into a corporate accelerator, that can be valuable. So it really depends on what you're getting from what you want to get from the accelerator.
So I'm a little bit louder. Hey. So I would say the first thing is obviously the money, right? And I would ditto what you said before in the sense that, like, if you're creating a small business, you don't need to raise venture capital money. And we get all these companies applying to YC saying like, oh, we really want to be part of this accelerator program, seeing that cash on the table. But in reality, when they take VC, that's not the optimal strategy to build the best business for them. So another reason why someone might do an accelerator, provided that they want to create a startup and they want to take the VC route, go for high growth, is to get into a network. Now TechStars and YC both have giant alumni networks. So as soon as you go through and kind of have the seal of approval, it is basically like the 21st century version of, like going to Harvard. Like the alumni network is often worth more than the cash that you get. So in the future, that's the value, and that value lasts forever, which is better than like just a 3-month program.
And tell me, why are your accelerators the best ones in the world? Why should anybody choose you? Of course, they Google first and they get different ratings and stuff, but what is specifically good about TechStars and YCombinator?
It's really hard to say as an investor whether you're any good or not, because it's a 10-year cycle as to whether you get a good outcome or not. YC have done a brilliant job and have a number of very successful companies. Now in the US, about 5% of Series A companies, or companies that raise a Series A round, are TechStars alums, and about 5% are YC alums. So that's an earlier view on market validation that people think that these are going to be good companies. It's still not an actual kind of measure of success. From our side, what we do that makes us different, we ultimately believe that entrepreneurs are going to build a better future. And on that basis, we have the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. And what that is made up of is we run startup weekends and startup weeks, which is about 1,000 events in 650 cities and 150 countries every year. About 150,000 people attend those events. We run that as a non-profit to develop ecosystem. We then have some stuff that we do in universities. So we run 70 events in universities. And now we're taking over Blackstone's Launchpad in the US. That gives us another 20 universities that we're working with. We then have 30 accelerators last year. We'll have about 40 this year. About 2/3 of those are with our large corporates. Those corporates represent $2 trillion of revenue. It's about 2.5% of global GDP. And then we have a venture fund where we've got about 400 million under management. We're closing more. And then we have elements of corporate development. So what we're doing is we're trying to surround entrepreneurs with a network that allows them to succeed right the way through from the moment of inspiration all the way through to IPO. And we had the first accelerator IPO last year with SendGrid, so that was a good one to see.
Craig?
Similar points. So yeah, YC now is like 1,500 companies and about $80 or $90 billion market cap. So we've had a handful of very big companies come out of YC. And yeah, I mean, like, why we're ranked at the top, I don't know. Like, all of these lists are arbitrary, right? So YC just happens to be older relative to a lot of the other accelerators. But I do think we are particularly good in the sense that, like, demo day is incredibly well attended. Obviously, the demo day is a thing at the end of the 3-month accelerator for, I don't know, I assume everyone kind of knows the deal. And so because it's well attended, the companies are more likely to have investments, and so very rarely do YC companies fail before raising money. The point at which YC companies and most startups then fail is between seed and Series A. So our goal is to make it as easy as possible for you to stay alive, conserve your money, raise your seed round, and then get to a Series A. So now we're creating more programs to make that easier. So I think that's a reason why we are differentiated, stand out.
I know 2 Estonian companies who have actually gone through acceleration programs, and one of them did confirm the story that it was TransferWise. They went to Seed Camp, and they said, we didn't go there to learn, we went for the investor network. And they have raised like over 100 million easily by today. Another company which has raised quite a lot of money, in the end ended up in AngelPad is Pipedrive. It's quite famous Estonian company by today, and they raised, I think, B round was 30 million dollars. But the funny thing is that they failed to get into YCombinator, by the way. So my question now would be that, so what does an application, like what does make an application to stand out? What are these kind of like good things you should, this is really good to get in and this is not so good? Like.
Sure. So I'll say that a substantial percentage of companies in YC apply more than once. For the summer 16 batch, for instance, almost 50% of the companies were on their second application.
Oh.
So, and one was on their 7th. So, like, because now it's like 10 years old, and it's crazy. Some people literally apply every batch, and because we have all of this stuff, this data on the back end, we see it come through. But what makes a good application, we get thousands and thousands and thousands of applications for about 100 to 150 spots every batch. So clarity is critical. it's potentially it's sort of like Tinder or like a dating app. Like if you don't think about yourself in competition with other people like you, you're disadvantaged. So like you have to make yourself stand out in some way, and like not in a cheesy way, but it has to be compelling. So the clarity around your idea, a big idea, and then a great team. And then as far as like the good teams who don't get in, it's just hard to say because like there often isn't a great reason. You know, say we get like 6,000 or 7,000 applications for 150 spots, probably 1,000 of those companies could be a part of YC. And at that point, it's kind of a crapshoot, to be honest.
So a little bit luck as well needs to be there.
For sure. Yeah, and so I would encourage people to talk to alumni. They're about 3,000 or 4,000 right now, and they often read applications for us, and that's super helpful in terms of like figuring out what you should put in there.
Max?
So when we're looking for companies to come into TechStars, we say team, market, traction, idea. It's based on the idea that we're so early as an organization, we're investing in companies so early that actually, if they're an amazing group of people and they're focused on an interesting market, that's kind of enough. So a lot of our push is on the quality of the team. And sort of for the Baltics, for Central Eastern European, in terms of the teams here, generally speaking, you've got exceptional technical talent, almost exclusively. I sit down, I do office hours, and no one ever says, oh, I can't build this, or I can't find a technical co-founder or anything like that. That's just a kind of given, which is not given pretty much anywhere else in the world. However, the thing is, given history, there's a lot of kind of uncertainty around embracing kind of the opportunity that's out there, feeling there's a sense that there are rules that are imposed on you. You as an entrepreneur actually can do whatever the fuck you want and really build something. And that kind of drive, that persistence, that ability to find solutions where others can't, that's often what's missing here. So if you are applying and you're from this region, I would kind of really dive deep on the application explaining why you're the right people from a business perspective as well as a technical perspective. And practical tips in terms of, for us, we have an application process that goes through F-Success. It's just the platform we use. There's two things that I always look at first. One is the video for the team, obviously, and then also the product. That gives me a very good overview. So you don't need to be massively highly polished in terms of quality, but you do need to communicate incredibly well why you're the right team to exercise to deliver on this, and why this market is interesting and what your proposition is. And then the rest of it, I will look through the rest, but I'm looking at those videos. That's the really compelling thing.
I would just add one thing, kind of underscoring. You need to educate the person reading your application way more than you think, especially coming from the EU. The reality is that like most YC alum and partners reading applications are from the States, and in particular like from working in the Bay Area, and it's often that they really just don't understand the market that you're going for and your solution. So education is super important.
So basically, I picked up a couple of things. Clarity is super important, team is super important, and communicating your idea or the traction or the team across the Atlantic basically is like communication side needs to be really excellent. Or this applies also for UK.
Yeah, so one of the other things is warm intros. It's classic on VC, but it's also for us. So for me, for my last class, I'd met 10 of the 11 companies. I'd either been introduced or had met face-to-face with 10 of the 11 companies before they came in. I had an application pool of 1,300 companies applying to TechStars London. I was taking 10, and then in the end, I took 11. So actually, if people can find their way to me, either through their own network or some other smart way, then that's a great way to make sure that you're being kind of considered properly. If you're just putting it into the application pool, I mean, we across TechStars, all of the accelerators, we get 20,000 applications a year. I mean, it's insane. So if you think you're going to cut through without having some kind of advantage that you create for yourself, then I think you're wrong. So you've got to find that way to hustle through.
I never thought about that. This kind of warm interest. This is definitely something I never thought about. You mentioned that teams from Baltics or our region, they're technically great. We actually know it ourselves that the business side is crap. For example, I worked for a company, a startup, and I was one of the 4 or 5 engineers working there. And in the end, we did hire somebody, a CEO from New York, but I think this was too late because we were basically polishing our rocket, and it was amazing. It was, as they call it, years ahead of its time. Technically amazing thing, and it never flew, business-wise. So this is the main, like how to say, hindrance we have here, and this is visible. You can see it obviously.
So I don't know Estonia. I don't know the Latvian countries enough around Latvia. The Latvian YC companies, like people that have applied. But this is a common problem at technical schools in the US. So oftentimes very, very competent engineers think that they can solve every single problem just by adding a new feature, making it faster, and often that's not the case at all. So oftentimes it's more about knowing your customers and then building exactly what they need than it is like, using the latest programming language. So that this is just like a common thing, and I wouldn't say it's specific to here.
One question I think one of you mentioned, interview strategies. Because every time you get to this interview round, how should you prepare for that? Because in the end, you will have a face-to-face meeting, and you will have to talk to them. What do you usually ask? What's going on there?
So each of our accelerators does something slightly different. So the way that we did it is that 1,300, we review all of those. I reviewed all of those with 4 of us doing that review, and took that down to 80. Obviously, I was heavily weighting those who I'd met and who'd been referred through. Those 80, 3 of us did Skype calls with all of those 80 individually, so we had that and cut that down to 40. We then did another 40 Skype calls, and that time we opened up it to a much more broader group of people. And then took that down to 20, and then I've got LPs in my small TechStars London funds, so they came in and we had 2 interviews face-to-face, 1 in each room with 8 people in each room. So by the time the companies got in, and then sometimes we did some technical due diligence as well. So by the time they get coming in, they will have spoken to us at least 10 times, up to 15 times, and met probably 25 people within our network. So, and I know this is quite different from you guys, but that's what I personally choose to do because I want to get a lot of eyes over the companies. Other MDs in different TechStars accelerators will do it differently, but we embrace our network quite a lot. I know YC are pretty brutal, so I'll hand over.
Yeah, that's different from us. So we fly people out for interviews to California, and one thing that catches people up is how rude the interviewers seem. This is like a real problem, and you're not used to it in normal conversation because most people are very polite and wait for you to finish your sentence. That doesn't happen at a YC interview. The interviews are 10 minutes long, and so it's basically like a lot of pattern matching. And so they'll say like, oh, okay, like what's your market? And then someone will start talking from the team, and they'll start explaining it, and the person asking the question will understand where they're going, having already read their application. After 10 seconds, mid-sentence, they will interrupt you with another question. This throws off people, and they like bomb their interviews for that reason. So you have to be prepared for that kind of thing. So like knowing the stats, getting to the point quickly, these are things that, I mean, there have been like 1,000 Medium blog posts written about like how to ace your YC interview, and like for the most part they're accurate, but like getting used to that is really strange because it just flusters people. And the one thing you really want to watch out for is becoming super defensive when someone interrupts you, because that comes off very poorly.
Just a couple of people in the room that I'm going to point out here. So Martin's from Toneboard. He went through the most recent TechStars cohort in London. He is from LEK, so he actually has some commercial knowledge, whilst also being teamed with fucking frighteningly clever people. So, Artus is there, hiding away. Yeah, so go and speak to them to understand what the experience of TechStars is like. And then Valentina was an associate on the program, wave your hand. So if you want to understand anything more about TechStars, go and talk to them, because they'll tell you how it is rather than how I'll sell it to you.
Cool. Just a note, we have 5 more minutes after the clicker goes on, so we have plenty of time. I would like to take a couple of questions from the audience in between. Do you have any like intermediate or immediate questions you would like to ask right away? Is there anybody? Just raise your hand. No questions? Really?
Come on, don't be so Baltic about
Exactly.
this.
There is one question there. Where are you from? He's from Estonia. By the way, I wanted to comment that this kind of like interrupting and short, getting to the point questions, then the yes/no answer should work really well. Yes, no. Okay, please.
Should startup have revenue to apply in the top accelerator?
It goes either way. Not necessary.
So what we say is from 2 to 20 people, from 0 revenue up to millions of dollars, and from having raised pre-seed, seed, or Series A, and that will depend on the particular flavor of accelerator that we're running. But often some of the best companies have nothing when they're coming in. But if you have nothing, you have to be fucking amazing. So if it's your 3rd exit that you've just come out of, and you've made a lot of money, you never have to work again, but you're so driven and such a chip on your shoulder that you're always going to work, and there's nothing that's going to stop you, then okay, yeah, slide pack is fine. If you're straight out of university, you've got nothing, and you've done nothing at universities that's of note, I can pretty much guarantee that you need to apply again.
Thank you.
This is like really hardcore answer. Very good.
I'll add a little bit to that for YC. So usually people don't apply with an idea anymore, unless there's someone like what you're talking about. You know, you sold 3 companies. Usually people are just about to launch if they don't have any revenue.
Cool.
And we see some later companies who've raised Series A coming through because we've got this amazing network of corporate partners, and particularly if it's a consortium. So we've got a music consortium with Sony and Warner. I can't remember who's in there actually, Sonos, I think. We've got an automotive one. There, people are like, shit, this is going to absolutely fundamentally change my business if I can get some proof of concepts away. So they'll come in at a later stage.
Cool. Anybody else? Do you want to ask a question? It's your chance. Don't be that Baltic. Look, there is somebody here. Where are you from?
Hi. I'm from Riga.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so both of you, so you have, the programs are divided in topics, right? So for the medtech, fintech, or you just taking in any applications and somehow sort them out?
So we don't do themed batches. I think that's what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we do have groups within YC now say of the 130 or 150 companies in your batch, those groups will be divided into like 10 companies each. We do specific tracks. For instance, there's an AI track right now, but each batch is kind of like open to whatever.
Okay, not single like topic, but you can bring in everybody.
Yeah, so we're very different in terms of how we operate. So we have these corporate partnerships often focused on a particular vertical, and then we also have horizontal programs where we'll look at anything. So we actually have both. So if you happen to, so we got fintech with Barclays. We've got we had an IoT one in New York. We've got
retail
Germany. With Target in the US and with Metro in Berlin. We just got a ton of these things. Health tech we've got with Cedars-Sinai in the US. So anyway, we've got a lot, but we've also got general ones as well. So it really depends on what you want to get as to where you should be applying.
There's a question just behind you. Just hand the mic behind you.
Hey, thank you. Now, what equity do you usually take, and is it wise for a startup to give it to you?
Equity.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same deal every time. 120K, 7%.
Yeah, same for, I mean, we're 20K of equity with 100K convertible note. If you want it, we take 6% for the 20K in the program.
The next guy?
You mentioned that rarely, like startups that go through your programs, they still fail in the middle of seed and they're around A. What's the main issues why it happens? Because I think the whole purpose of the program is that you do not fail.
So our stats are, and I'm sure yours are similar, is 90% of the companies that have been through TechStars, and we have got 1,300 in the portfolio, have either been acquired or are still active, so 10% have failed. That's the kind of flip of what you'd normally see with startups. So there is currently correlation between continued being alive and having gone through our accelerator. But the reality is launching and building a company in a situation of high uncertainty will lead generally to failure. So just to give you some context, 2/3 of all VC funds do not return the cash they're given, and another 15% do not perform better than a tracker. So only 20% actually outperform the market, the FTSE or the S&P. So most VCs don't do a great job. We're earlier than VCs, taking more risk, which means that a lot of companies will fail. We help them enormously, and our stats say that we're doing unbelievably well. We'll see when tough times get tougher just exactly how it washes out, but there's bound to be failure.
Why do they fail?
Why do they fail? Oh, okay, well, I mean, it's just the same reasons as always. No, bad team, no product market fit, didn't get funding. CB Insights does a nice.
If you get into your program, you say the team is the most important, so you basically get only awesome teams. If they fail later and the team gets worse, is it what you're mentioning?
So.
I think I can answer this. I think I can. So basically, since you're not using microphone, the question is that they do an amazing job in selection, and somehow some teams still fail. But considering that 90% of startups usually fail, and they only have a 10% failure rate, then they can't be fucking gods knowing everything anyway, always. So this is your answer. Shit happens. Yes.
Yeah, ditto. I don't. Yeah, I mean, this is how VC works. Statistically, you have to have these giant companies that make up for the rest of your portfolio. Otherwise, you're never going to return. If you raise $1 billion fund, you can't be selling companies for $10 million because that's not even going to work out with the model. So it has to be these higher risk things that, if it works out, it really works out, and that makes up for all the other stuff. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Hopefully more of these companies succeed and stay alive, and that's what we're trying to do. I think a lot of them fail because they leave the accelerator, they don't have any pressure from this environment around them, so I think keeping a cohort of friends who really put the pressure on you is super helpful. And then they never find product market fit before they try and raise a Series A, so they're almost out of money, they don't have product market fit, they have no leverage in fundraising, and because they have no leverage and they also don't have demo day, at the end of any of these accelerators, they have no pressure to put on a VC. And so they just die.
Cool. Let's take one more question. There is, in the back row there is a question. Catchbox, just throw it yeah. Look at that. I love these microphones, these software.
I've never seen these before.
Yeah, no,
it's
they're
super
great.
cool.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm just wondering, do you have a list of markets you are interested in right now, like African, Chinese, India, or it always depends on the project? Thank you.
I would say we're probably more interested in types of companies than specific markets. For instance, biotech. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff in the next decade now that things like CRISPR exist. So we're super excited about stuff like that. I mean, obviously, we're interested in international companies, but really it's, anywhere is good.
Yeah, for us, anywhere is good. We do have priorities of where we're expanding to. As I said, we've got 30 accelerators. That's probably in 25 cities, spread very internationally. We'll open another 10 this year. And with Startup Weekend, we're in 600, we're in 150 cities. So we've got, we're very all about kind of global presence.
So last 2 minutes, can you tell us maybe a funny story about an interview which was Like, maybe without mentioning names, but we should really, you went out there and said, what the fuck? It made you feel really weird or awkward, or did you do something yourself which is really funny?
So before I did this job, I used to start up companies for Virgin. So I started up 4 different companies at Virgin around the world, working basically for Richard Branson. I remember there various things, like we had sent in actual prototypes of vibrating shoes. So when you walked around, your shoes vibrated. That was kind of weird. There was another guy who was absolutely convinced that we should be patenting 3D sound sculpture, and it was going to be an incredibly amazing... Oh, and then a swan bird bath, but not any kind of bird bath, specifically a bird bath for swans. So yeah, I've seen thousands and thousands of companies, and there are some bloody odd ones out there.
So marijuana is now legal in California. And we have a company in the batch that right now that makes marijuana soda.
Soda!
Yeah, and there may or may not have been some people at YC that may or may not have known if it was marijuana soda and had some. And yeah, it created some pretty good interviews for the rest of the day.
And on that note, thank you very much. Give them a big applause. It was great having you here, guys. Thank you for coming. And I hope you enjoy Baltics and Latvia.